Being a YouTuber means I tell you about my thoughts all the time. I like to turn that around occasionally and get your thoughts on some topics. I do that by using the community tab on my channel page. So if you're interested in providing some feedback, answering these polls, please go check it over there. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been running a series of polls asking you questions around how you consume YouTube content, particularly around watches. Let's get into your answers. So question one was really simple. Do you tend to watch material at the price point that you're normally interested in, any price point at all, as long as it's interesting, or do you really only focus on certain watches and just watch content around those very specific pieces? What we found was 63% of you reckon you'll watch any content at any price point as long as that content is interesting. 27% of you really like watching the content at and around the price point that you tend to collect. And 10% of you are really only watching for very specific things. You know, there's half a dozen watches you're interested in. You look for those half dozen watches, and that's about all. I'm not surprised by the 10% number. That's pretty much where I expected it to be. I thought there'd be more people interested in content around their collecting price point. So I was a little surprised at that, but not greatly so. I just would have I expected a slightly different balance between any price point and your collecting price point. Where would I fit? How would I have answered that? I kind of have two answers. As an enthusiast who does a lot of their own research and spends a lot of time very carefully sort of evaluating my own thoughts, I tend to really only go out and look at other people's thoughts on very specific watches as an enthusiast. You're looking to buy my own stuff. On the other hand, as a YouTuber who's trying to drag in as much research material as I can, thinking about how the industry's working and what people are saying and thinking, I tend to just watch anything that's interesting at any price point to get that sense. Can I be certain that there's a real hard line between those two? Absolutely not. Okay, I'll get off the bat. These series of questions, I normally do 5 questions, so I'm doing 6 because I was actually thinking of pulling question 2 altogether. Question 2 is what happens when a YouTuber gets frustrated and in a fit of pique asks a dumb question. What I did here was essentially ask, if you're watching a review and the review is clearly going in a different direction to you, do you actually just watch to the end and then think about your position, or do you just immediately rage quit, but perhaps leave detailed feedback anyway? Dumb question, because really those aren't the options. There's a whole bunch of options in the middle. Most of you called me out on that, and the comments have got lots of comments to that effect. Why did I ask this stupid question? Mainly because I was frustrated and in a fit of pique when I was doing my routine, come in and go through the comments and answer, and I got into some discussions with people. And it was only after some time I realized I was arguing with people that hadn't even watched my video. I was thinking about pulling it, but you know what? Don't hide my mistakes. I'll get it out there, but I'm not going to go through the results because, as I said, the question's kind of stupid. Okay, question 3. This was actually really important to me as a YouTuber to understand how you sort of rely sometimes on what we say. The reality is, everyone says never buy watches if you can't get to try them on first, but I live in a big city that is well serviced by watch ADs, and still I'd say half the watches I would like to try on, I simply can't. And I can't imagine that for people who are in smaller cities and regional centres, it would be 1,000 times worse. So my question was, how often do you have to buy a watch, sight unseen? Do you ever do it? Do you do it sometimes, or do you only do it when you're really confident that you've got a pretty solid return system, support, sort of as a safety net? I was not surprised that a majority of people were routinely buying watches sight unseen based solely on reviews from people like me. I was surprised it was as high as 71%. I was expecting to see more people who were sort of committing to it, but were using the idea of a return system as a bit of a safety net. That was only 9% of people. Caught me a bit off guard. I thought that there'd be more of those. I'm unsurprised that there's only 20% of you saying, no, you would never buy a watch sight unseen, relying purely on reviews. I'm not surprised that there are people with that view, and I'm also not surprised it's only about 1 in 5 people. The reality is the rest of us just can't get to see the watches you want to buy before you don't get to try them on before you buy them. This really confirmed some of my ideas from my previous series about the responsibilities that YouTubers have to get things right. Given that 71% of people will potentially be making some fairly significant investments based on what people like me say about a watch, we have to take that seriously. And I certainly do. Okay, so question 4 was really about whether you guys tended to consume content and content only, or whether you were more aligned with channels and would watch those channels almost regardless of the content. What we had was really a sliding scale. Do you tend to watch the channel first regardless of what the content? A bit of both, but mostly the channel's more important. A bit of both, but mostly the content's more important. Or at the end of the day, will you watch any good content from any channel regardless of who's saying it? Unsurprising, the two ends were pretty small. Only 7% of people watch stuff from their chosen channel regardless of the content. At the other end, slightly larger group of people, 15% of people, cast the net really wide, trying to find great content and don't care where the channel is. But unsurprisingly, what does that work out to be? 78% of you are in the middle. Most people searching for content and relying more on good content than channel. And about half that number the other way around, really focusing on the channels mostly, but then filtering out the content they like. I'm unsure how that works in practice. Given how do you search for good content if you're not already on the channel, then you're relying on the algorithm, or you're doing some really detailed searching and filtering through. My gut feel is a lot of people might think that the content is more important than the channels they're looking for, and are honestly thinking that's it, I'm searching for content rather than the channels. But I worry that the way that YouTube works, the algorithm, the way it recommends things, the way that just people will respond to stuff that's familiar, I have a suspicion that most people actually in real life, without even knowing it, probably go to the same channels over and over again. Okay, so question 5 was actually a serious question. This was one about how you consume that I was kind of worried about. And it's really about how long a video should be. But not only video length, but also kind of the idea of packaging videos. So if I've got a topic that might be going for 20 minutes, should I break it into 2 10-minute videos, that sort of thing? So I ask a series of questions. Do you care about video length at all? I asked the next, because one of the things going back, one of the considerations was, are you watching long videos, maybe not watching the whole thing, but potentially coming back later and finishing it? Or are you getting 5 minutes into a 20-minute video, vanishing and never coming back? So there's a series of questions trying to tease that out. I was really surprised at the answers, very happy with the answers, that 62% of you said you don't care about video length. If it's good length, if it's good, then the length is kind of irrelevant. Only 1% of you said, look, you'll try a longer video, but if it doesn't catch you like really instantly, you're likely to leave and not return at all. I was really gratified by that number. And then we got really very similar responses for the next couple. The idea about, would you start watching a longer video but then come back and watch the rest in pieces, or you would prefer that same video broken up into little chunks? Actually, the same number of people responded that they wanted either one. And then only 6% of you said that you would simply not click on a long video, say something over 15 minutes. You can already see I've kind of taken that on board, and I chose to do a 20-minute video about the Breitling logo, which YouTube is probably going to tell me is the dumbest thing ever. But it's how I would prefer to do it. I'd prefer to do, even if it is a boring talking head video, this last question I tacked on the end because question 2 was rubbish. And so this was really about what kind of content you wanted from people like during a show, like Watches and Wonders or Watches Geneva. Were you interested in just the details and just the specs? Do you want mostly the specs and details but with a little bit of opinion? Do you want it the other way around, mostly opinion with a little bit of specs thrown in? And lastly, do you just not bother watching YouTube coverage of watch shows? Only 4% of you said that last one, therefore I'm going to toss that one, kick it to the curb and say essentially no one. Interestingly, only 9% of you wanted to watch a video simply to get the details and the specs, which makes total sense. I mean, why watch a video for that? Just check the press release, read something in 10 seconds and you'll get the details and specs. So I'm not surprised it's only 10%, only 9%. So really the action was in the middle. Are you watching mostly to get some detail but with a bit of opinion on the side, or vice versa? Do you mostly want people's opinion with a bit of detail on the side? Half of you, more than half of you, 53% said primarily you want details and specs and then some opinion. 33% said the other way around. Hopefully terribly, that means that I only made my Watches and Wonders videos, only made about 33% of you happy, and I'm unlikely to change, mainly because I'm an enthusiast. No one's paying me to do this. I'm going to do the stuff that interests me, which is mostly my opinions, not just putting out simple facts and figures that you guys can simply Google. Okay, so that's it. That's how you guys told me you consume YouTube content. Rest assured, I'm not changing my channel based on any of this. And in fact, there was one question that I may have taken into account, but you guys came back very firmly on one decision, so I won't be changing. Yeah, really, that's about it. Not much else to add. If you've got any comments, leave them below. And yeah, I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. See you later. Bye.